Hello and welcome to the show. Before we begin, just a heads up. I'm going to be at an event on the 22nd of June in Abuja, and it's something hosted by Brunch and Bond. They are an organization. They are devoted to what should I say? Female networking. Yeah, let me just put it that way. Female networking. Yeah, they're an organization devoted to female networking, and sometimes they get together, sometimes for socials, but a lot of the times, the meetings that they have, they organize it where they can have specialists like me show up on different aspects of business, talk them through challenges that they're having, and help people work through particular problems that they might have. So, at tomorrow's episode, I'll go into a detailed, okay, maybe not detailed, but in tomorrow's episode, I'll give you guys a glimpse of the sorts of stuff that we're expected to go over at the seminar. And again, okay, well, it's not a seminar, it's more like a lunch slash networking session. So, yeah, so tomorrow's episode, I'll let you guys know about that. So, for those of you who are based in Abuja, female entrepreneurs, business owners, or you're just thinking of getting into business, you want to hang around like minded people who are at your stage in business or who have even gone beyond your stage in business, because we're going to have people there who are newbies, 3 to 5 years, and beyond. If you want to hang out with those sorts of folks, learn some new skills, help troubleshoot problems that you're working through, then this is the event for you. So there's going to be more details about that tomorrow. So today, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be discussing a couple of things around business boards. So first off, what is a business board? And before we continue, I'd like to give a little warning. For those of you who've been listening to the episode for a while, to the podcast for a while, this episode is going to be similar to the podcast episode that I did on having investors or whether you need a sponsor for your business. So some of the issues and the advantages that we're going to discuss here are going to overlap. So for those of you who have listened to those episodes in the past, you pretty much have heard everything before, but I guess there's no problem with having a refresher. If this is your first time of listening to the show, after you're done listening to this, you can go look for those other episodes as well, just to grant you a broader, much more wider context on the issues that we discuss over here. Because technically speaking, a business board is not the same thing as having an investor, it's not the same thing as having a business sponsor, but there can be some overlap when we start looking at the advantages or disadvantages or how we go about approaching people to be a member of our board or a member of our investment panel or to be a sponsor of the business. So today, business boards only. So a business board, also called board of directors, depending on which country you are, is a group of people who oversee the management of your company or your organization. So they are not the ones who are doing the daily running around, but they oversee the management. So the management of the bakery or the management of the school or the management of the farm or whatever your business is your own responsibility. You're going to do the day-to-day, you and your employees. But then the business board or the board of directors are the people who oversee you, and they make sure that you are acting like an adult and acting in the company's best interests, just to make sure that everything is fine. Because when people are invested in you and there's a bunch of money behind you, everybody wants to be sure that you're behaving like a good boy or a big girl at all times. So having a board is useful in this regards. So the reason why, part of the reason why they perform this function, especially for those of you who have investors or for those of you who have shareholders in your company, is because the board of directors, the business board, they have a fiduciary duty to the shareholders. So they have to protect the shareholders' interests. Fiduciary relationship, how will I explain it? Well, it's a legal term. There's a lot to it, but let's just say basically, if you have to protect somebody's financial interests or other kinds of interests, then you stand in a fiduciary relationship. But remember, it's a legal thing, so there's more to that, and it's beyond the focus of this podcast. So I'm not going to go into this. And then, how does it help with business development? That's having a board, because since this is a podcast about sales and business development, so excuse me. Yeah, so since this is a podcast about sales and business development, everything that we discuss over here on the podcast is tied directly or maybe in an ancillary way to business development and sales. So how does this help with business development? It helps in different ways. It helps with strategic thinking, because well, hopefully the people that you have on the board have some expertise beyond yours, some industry knowledge. It also helps with financial acumen because they're supposed to make sure that we're all behaving like good boys and girls in running the business. So of course they're going to keep us on our toes. So hopefully one or two of them know stuff about how to balance your checkbook. Sorry, not checkbook. Statement of accounts. Is it called a statement of accounts? I can't remember. I'm not really into finance. You have to talk to an accountant for that. But basically, hopefully, they know how to balance one or two things, and they know stuff about ratios, for instance, so that if you're running a farm, maybe there's somebody on the board who should be able to say that, hey, we're in the chicken business, but I really think you're spending too much money on this and too much money on that. Since there's a poultry business, actually 60% of the money should be going here, 20% of the money should be going there, and blah, blah, blah. If you don't do this, these are the problems that you can run into. And what else? Okay, yeah, they can also help with communication skills or communication problems because I want to make sure that we're all behaving like good boys and girls in running our businesses. So, of course, if we're throwing a tantrum over problems with certain key clients or maybe stakeholders or things like that, the members of the board of directors, they can bring us back in line. So, why is it necessary? A board is not necessary per se, but it can be helpful for businesses of all sizes. But there are a couple of reasons that you might want to consider when it comes to forming a board. Remember that we're looking for folks that are going to help provide guidance and advice with strategic planning, financial management, or even risk management. Yeah, that's something I forgot to talk about, risk management. So because you're getting people on the board who have more industry breadth, more experience than you, they're going to be able to say, hey, look, young man, young lady, with the path that we're going down, this is the problem that we face. We haven't done this. How are you going to factor for that? And blah, blah, blah. Then they're also helpful when it comes to raising capital because the board provides credibility and expertise. So investors, one of the things that might make them feel comfortable with throwing money your way is if they see that this business is not just all about you. So they say, oh, Catherine is not just standing on her own, or Tavishima is not just standing on his own, but he has a board behind him, and the board has Mr. So and so, engineer so and so, or Princess Dame so and it makes them feel much more comfortable that their money is in good hands because these are the people who are providing oversight and making sure that the company is being managed in a responsible and ethical manner. So they feel like, well, if I put money in this, if I'm going to be a shareholder, if I'm going to be some sort of investor, if I'm going to be a creditor to the company, then shows that the resources that I'm providing are going to be used wisely. Wisely. Yeah, wisely. So if you notice, I said investor, creditor, shareholder. Well, that's because let me just try and speak on the difference. That's for those of you who are listening to this podcast for the first time and maybe who are not familiar with these terms. Because surprisingly, a bunch of you are between the ages of I think 18 and 25 listening to the podcast. The last time that I checked the what's that thing called, analytics. Yeah, when I check the data, the analytics. So for those of you who are 18 to 25 might not be familiar with these sorts of things, you run a business and there are certain classes of people that are going to owe you money or give you money. You have the investors. These are the people who are putting money into the business because they want a share in the company or they want some returns later on in the future. You have shareholders, especially for people who have public companies. Shareholders are folks who have bought an actual share in the company, like it says, and because of that, it entitles them to certain things, to vote on certain decisions, and also a certain share in the profits. But then there are some people who are just creditors to the company. A creditor is someone who just gives you money, but they don't want to decide anything that happens in your company. They don't want a share in your company. They're just lending you money. So it's like, hey, you're doing good business as a Kelechi Chicken Growers Limited. Okay, well, let's just stick with that. So Kelechi Chicken Growers Limited, Looks like you guys are doing good business. You know what? I have 1M free. I can lend it to you, but by this time next year, you have to pay me back that 1M by paying back 1.7. Are you good with that deal? You say yes, you take the money, and then they now become your creditor. So that's the difference in these kinds of people. Do you need a board in the early days? That's for those of us who are listening to the podcast right now, because I doubt that, or rather, I would hope that we have a few people here listening to the podcast who already run public companies. If you do, holler at your boy, hit me up. I'd like to have a conversation with you. Just curious, anyway, because I don't run a public company yet, so it'd be nice to be connected to folks who are way ahead of where I am in the business journey. So, in the early days, do you need a board? The answer is no, because the most primal functions of a business are the sales and marketing or the business development function, which we talk about a lot on the podcast, and then also the innovation function. Innovation is innovating in your product, and then also innovating in the delivery of your product or your service. So those are the two primary functions of the business that you ought to be paying attention to in the early days of your business. All the other things come later. So, where are we? Okay, so if you're early in the game, then these are the two functions that you have to worry about now. We can worry about business boards later. What type of boards should you have? Well, there are different kinds of boards. There's the advisory board, there's the governing board. They're called different things according to, depending on where you are, legal jurisdiction, stuff like that. But basically, advisory boards provide guidance and they provide advice to you, the person who is managing the company, but they don't have any legal authority. So forgive me for the noise. Baby boy is here at home, and so he's interrupting my recording. He's not feeling well. He's home from school. He has a cold. He's passed it round to me, at least, and so he's interrupting the recording. Anyway, so where was I? Okay, I think I was talking about different kinds of boards. Okay, yeah, so advisory boards, yes. So they provide guidance and advice to you or whoever is the management team, but they don't have any legal authority to make any decisions. That's why they are advisory boards. Remember, depending on which part of the world you are, it might be called something else. Then there's the governing board. Those are the folks who have authority to make decisions, like who to hire. Maybe they can even fire the CEO. For those of you who are fans of Apple, you know that Steve Jobs ran into trouble with the board the first time round, and they fired him, and that's because they had a governing board. Jobs and his partners were very young at the time, so of course it made sense that since people were throwing lots of money at them investing in the company, it made sense that they would have adults overseeing what these kids were doing with the company. So they had a governing board, and the governing board, they could fire the CEO, and then they fired him. They can also approve initiatives, because like with Apple board, I think there's some products that they approved that didn't work out, and so they voted to get rid of them, and then determine the company's strategic direction, which way are we headed. So those are the two kinds of boards. Advisory, they're only providing advice, but they don't have power to do anything else. And then the governing board, they have power to make decisions, and they will make decisions, which include to fire you if things don't go according to plan. That's assuming you're the one who is calling the shots in the business right now, and what you have is a governing board. Before you set up the board, of course, you have to set up clear expectations beforehand. The management team should be aware that, okay, these people that we're calling ambassador this, or deaconess this, or engineer so on. So we need to be very clear on why we're calling deaconess and ambassador and engineer to come and be a member of the board. What kind of authority that are they going to have? Stuff like that. It's going to help avoid misunderstandings and conflicts later on down the road. So when do you need a business board? Okay, you don't necessarily need to have one, but from what we have discussed, you can see that there are advantages to it, especially if you expect to grow in some in some complexity, or to grow in scale. Yeah, I think that'll be a better way of putting it. If you expect to grow in scale, if you want to be a lifestyle business, the wedding photographer, you only want to work as yourself, take weddings when you want, take holidays when you want, let everything evolve around you, then of course you don't need a board. But however, the law says that there are a bunch of folks who need to have a board. So there's a legal requirement for these people to have a board. Okay, well, let me rephrase so I don't cause any confusion. First off, there's no legal requirement for all companies to have a board, but there are some companies that the law says you need to have a board. So these are public companies, then companies that are listed on this stock exchange, companies that have more than 50 shareholders, and then folks that have a paid up capital of more than 10 mil. So basically, that just means you're setting up this business. A bunch of folks have given you money. All the money that they gave you amounted to 10.5 mil. Then you need to have a board. If the money amounts to 8 mil, I guess you don't need to have a board. Anyway, bottom line, speak to your lawyer. I haven't practiced law in about, what will I say, like 16, 17 years. Let's just say 20 years to be on the safe side. I haven't practiced law in 20 years. So if you're looking for legal advice on these sorts of things, speak to someone who is actually practicing law. So, who needs to have a company? Basically, all the big boys and big girls. So, Unilever. Yes, Unilever needs to have a board. Let's see, what else? Who's a big company? Dangote. Yeah, Dangote. Yeah, they definitely need to have a board. We've already spoken about Apple Computer. Yes, those guys need to have a board. But if you're a wedding planner, you don't. If you're an architecture firm, you don't necessarily have to have a board. If you run exporting business, you don't necessarily have to have a board. If you do large scale farming, like in my father-in-law's place, when you're traveling to, I think just before, I can't remember what was before or after Uromi on the road there. Because, okay, I'm ashamed to say this, but I've only been there once anyway. So on the way there, I noticed large-scale plantations, just palm trees and palm trees and palm trees. So there are people who are involved in those kinds of businesses. I think that's a really interesting business, especially since you plant the tree. I think you give it, is it 7 to 12 years to grow, and it's only after that that you can start making profit. So any money that you put down for the first decade, nothing comes of it because the tree has to grow to produce the palm wine to begin with. So if you're that kind of farmer, no, you don't need to have a board, except if you're meeting some of these criteria. Eventually you're growing the business to a certain scale, and you start attracting more shareholders, raising more money, or you want to list on the stock exchange so that you can, get more money. So what was I? Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's it. Pretty much financing, credibility, those sorts of things, yeah, then it might make sense to have a board. So, how many directors do you need? The Companies and Allied Matters Act, if I remember correctly, that's the law that is responsible for these sorts of things in Nigeria, says that you must have at least two directors. That's, first of all, not everybody has to have a director, but if you sorry, what was I? Is it directors? Yeah, board of directors. So not everybody needs to have a board, but if you meet the other conditions and you are going to have a board, you need at least two. And then there are many companies that have much larger boards, 3, 5, I think I've even seen 10 or 12. There's an insurance company in Abuja here. Okay, well, not in Abuja because they're a national company that I'm trying to get in with to do sales training for them and stuff like that. I think they have like 12 or maybe like 15 members of the board. So now that you've decided that you want to have a board, what's the next thing to do? Of course, you start recruiting members, and if you're recruiting members of the board, you have to pay attention to their skills and to their experience so that it can benefit the company. Remember all the benefits that we spoke about in the early part of the podcast? If you don't match the skills and experience right, then you have a bunch of people who are there to provide oversight to you, but who don't know jack and who can't give you any useful advice. Now, do you have to pay the board? Because I'm sure there's some people listening who want to have a board, but they think, man, this sounds expensive. I don't know how much money I have, because if I'm going to call Deaconess so and so, engineer so and so, and ambassador so and so to be on my board, if I'm going to give each of them like 300k each per month, then man, that's a lot of money. So, do you need to have a board? No, you don't. Some companies choose to pay the board a salary, or retainer, compensation, whatever it is you want to call it, just for their time and effort. But that depends on the size and complexity of the company. So it's arguable that if you're just starting, what business did we come up with? Did I say Chinedu Chicken Rearers Association? Okay, let's say Chinedu Chicken Rearers Company. So if you're just starting out now and it's just you and your brother, and you call Deaconess so and so, engineer so and so, and ambassador so and so, they might not expect anything from you because, hey, it's Chukudi. He's a good boy. We've known him since he was year high. It's just him and his brother. How much money do they have? Let's just support them. We're not going to take anything from them. Yes, I'll be a member of your board. Where are the papers for me to sign? And then blah blah blah. That's it. You're off, and you now have a board. But remember, you guys need to have these conversations up front because it's possible that Ambassador so and so might think, well, yes, we know Chinedu, he's been a good boy. We've known him since year high, but nothing goes for free. We need to introduce Chinedu to the world of business. And the truth is that in business, nothing goes for nothing. So even if it's just 100K a month, Chinedu has to be dropping something. So you have to have that conversation before you sign up everybody. Deaconess Akubero is cool. She doesn't say anything. Who else? Engineer so and so is cool. He doesn't say anything. But then Ambassador so and so, starts calling you like, "Hey, young man, how far?" And then you guys start having that nasty money conversation. It's a little untidy. So I have all the conversations beforehand. So whether or not to pay your board members, it depends. Size and complexity of the business. Eventually, Chinedu Chicken Rearers Association, no, Chinedu Chicken Rearers Company is going to grow and become large and complex. And yes, they might need to now pay them because now instead of just staying in the comfort of their home and you call them when you have a problem and then they advise you, so maybe now they have to come into the office on a weekly or a monthly basis, to discuss serious things. So at that point, give yourself brain. It will make sense to start shaking body small, even if they don't expect millions from you at this point. Then it also depends on the experience and the expertise of the board members. So sometimes experienced people, knowledgeable people, you have to give them something to make it worth their while for them to hang around. So that's it today on business boards. Why did I bother going into this? The reason why is because I've noticed a lot of stuff on the socials, LinkedIn, people talking about business boards and things like that. And of course, like when people start harping on these subjects, they always make it like a make or break thing. So having a board is not a make or break thing. That's not what's going to make your business or kill your business, at least not in the early days. But if it's something that you've been hearing about and as your business grows, it's something you want to consider having. Hopefully, this has been a little, what will I say? What's that word? Is it expose or whatever? This has been something to open, to let you know the lay of the land, basically. And hopefully, you'll have information about where to go next or what to look at next. But remember, this is not my specialty. I'm not a lawyer anymore. I haven't used my wig and gown in close to two decades. So you want to take these things serious, then you talk to someone who is still practicing law. Accountants, I think, can also give advice on these sorts of things. So speak to a lawyer, speak to an accountant. But if it's sales related, if it's business development related, then sure, hit me up on LinkedIn. So that's all for today. Remember, you can subscribe for free to the show. You're not going to pay a thing. The name of the show is Sales for the Nigerian Business Person Podcast. It's available, confirmed, on Spotify, Google, Apple iTunes, Pocket Cast, Overcast, and also any podcast player of your choice. Remember to connect with me on LinkedIn. The name is Tavishima Ayede. You have problems with spelling it. I noticed that one guy who we're chatting together assumed that Ayede is Aiy, but it's not. So the name is in the podcast. I really should find out what it's called. The profile thing, the little box with the podcast art and my picture. My name is right there, and my email address is there as well. And remember, I'm not available on the other socials, but the videos are still on Instagram and on TikTok. If you're curious and you want to see them. So that's it all. That's all for today. Thanks for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next episode.